The deep state is using ESG to wokeify our companies and our entire economy and ultimately to transform the entire economic system. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Behind the Deep State. I'm your host, Alex Newman, and we've talked about ESG on this show many times. We've talked about it in conversations that matter. In fact, just some months ago, in fact, we've had him on twice just this year. We've interviewed West Virginia State Treasurer Riley Moore talking about the actions that his state and a coalition of 15 other states were taking to rein in some of these mega banks and their ESG. But I want to focus today just on ESG because a lot of people don't even know what it is yet or how it's going to affect them or what it's doing. So I want to give you some of the background, some of the history, why it's so dangerous, and also, most importantly, what's happening to push back and how we can continue to push back even more against this evil totalitarian deep state agenda. So let's start with some definitions. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance metrics. These are basically different categories where companies say that they're doing this for the environment, or they're doing this for social issues, or they're doing this for corporate governance, right? And so an example would be if a company is really buying, giving Al Gore money, right, to buy carbon offsets, or if they're buying Bill Gates's disgusting lab-grown meat, they can say, "Oh, look how environmentally friendly we are. We're cutting X, Y, Z number of greenhouse gas emissions," or whatever, something like that. Or they could say, "Oh, look, all of our advertising is promoting homosexuality or feminism or disrupting the nuclear family," or whatever it is. They can tout their ESG street cred. And it sounds stupid, it sounds fringe, but unfortunately, it is a very, very serious trend. And there are other terms for it. So the Rothschilds had a summit. We actually covered it at the New American. This was many years ago, called the stakeholder capitalism. They're redoing capitalism, something Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum have pushed. Even the Vatican got in on this. They partnered with the Rothschilds and they started pushing this Council on Inclusive Capitalism. But all of this is related, folks. And I think and we've done episodes on the Council on Inclusive Capitalism that the Vatican launched. But I think the simplest way to understand this all is basically think of it as fascism, right? In Adolf Hitler's Germany, it was National Socialism, but really you could still own your factory. Private companies could still own and operate their business as long as they did what the regime wanted. And that's really what we're seeing here with the stakeholder capitalism, the inclusive capitalism, the ESG capitalism, right? In a free market system, a company focuses on several things, right? It focuses on, really, its primary objective is to make money for its shareholders. And so how does it make money for its shareholders? Well, it has to satisfy the needs and wants of consumers in a way that makes them willing to purchase the goods or services. So really, the free market system is beautifully designed in that it forces people and companies to serve their fellow man, right? If a company wants to make money, they've got to bake bread, they've got to build houses, they've got to produce tomatoes, or they've got to do something that serves other people. And so their concern is, how do we make money? And by desiring to make money, they have to figure out how to serve people so that they can make money. Well, in Adolf Hitler's Germany, there was another concern: how to satisfy the Fuhrer, how to satisfy the regime. And so maybe the Fuhrer said, "We need more bullets," or "We need more Luftwaffe airplanes." And so then the companies got the message and said, "All right, we got to start producing that." Well, it's the same thing with this ESG. Instead of thinking, how are we going to make money for our shareholders, they're thinking, how are we going to satisfy the ESG fanatics so that we can keep getting investment, so that we don't get in trouble, so that these woke hedge funds don't pull money out of our accounts, etc. And so what's happening then is this is causing a massive diversion of capital from productive enterprises that are interested in making money for their shareholders, and diverting it into woke companies that are doing what the elites want them to do, which again, promote the wokeness, promote the feminism, destroy the fossil fuel industry, right? Pick your thing. So we've got massive amounts flowing into these green investments, especially with this crazy Inflation Reduction Act. Money has just been pouring into these green investments, these ESG funds, which of course are all going to benefit from federal rigging of the markets. Just in this ridiculously named Inflation Reduction Act, there is almost $400 billion worth of climate and energy shenanigans. Now, McKinsey and Company, they estimate that over 90% of S&P 500 companies are now publishing ESG reports. So it tells you how ubiquitous this is becoming. And then Bloomberg Intelligence says that ESG will this year exceed $40 trillion worth of assets. Something like $2.5 trillion worth of capital has been allocated to sustainable investment funds. That's according to the research firm Morningstar. And according to Morningstar, there is over 300, at the end of 2021, there was over $357 billion in these ESG issues. That's more than 4 times the amount that was in there just a few years earlier, folks. Pretty amazing. Just over the last year, more than $70 billion poured into these ESG funds. That's a new record. And folks, this is really, really serious. Okay, they are wokeifying our companies. Now, some of the big players you know very well, BlackRock, State Street, and of course the big banks, Citi and Bank of America. They're all promoting this stuff. They're promoting the gender ideology, the LGBT stuff, the hyper race mongering, the destruction of hydrocarbon fuels, the destruction of firearm companies. Right, this is all happening now, folks. And where this is going to lead is that they are going to bankrupt companies that don't comply with their wishes. So every company, then every potential employer, every potential investment is going to end up being in line with the dictates of these fanatical elites, and they want to try to eliminate and destroy all of your options. And in fact, they're actually moving very rapidly in that direction. See, right now, none of this is mandated in the United States yet, but we're moving very rapidly in that direction. The SEC is moving ahead with ESG mandates. They're ordering companies to disclose their Scope 3 climate regulations, which incidentally is going to bankrupt huge numbers of small and medium-sized farms, especially family farms. The European Union has already done this. The EU is enforcing what they call the Non-Financial Reporting Directive. That forces companies to publish information on their environmental and social track record. The EU also has something called the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. That also requires investment firms and portfolio managers to explain their ESG info to clients. And now, folks, this is moving to a global level. At the climate conference last year in Scotland, the COP26, they came up with a International Sustainability Standards Board, and this board is supposed to be developing a global framework for ESG reporting, right? Where every company in the world, if they want to play ball with this absurdity, is going to have to become woke and ESG compliant. They've got more than 80 chief financial officers who have supported the initial framework, and they are planning to do much, much more in the years ahead, folks. So this is very, very serious. Now, a little bit of background. This term does come out of the United Nations. It was invented by Paul Clements Hunt. He's a UN globalist who served as the head of the UNEP, that's the UN Environment Program Finance Initiative. And he's actually bragged many times in public about how these ESG metrics were going to force companies to subscribe to and help impose the UN Agenda 2030 on the planet. Of course, he was a big disciple of UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown. In fact, while this Paul Clements Hunt was a UN official, he was actually supporting Gordon Brown's work on financial stability and sustainability for the UN Secretary General. And Prime Minister Gordon Brown, of course, is a big New World Order fan. Check this out.
In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges for the future.
So the ESG term is kind of getting a bad smell to it now, and so there are more and more efforts to say, well, maybe we should rebrand this or come up with something less controversial, because more and more people are complaining about ESG. I'll tell you about some of the opposition soon enough. There's one guy here, Robert Eccles. He's a professor who spent 12 years researching sustainability at Harvard Business School. He says that the ESG term just doesn't have value anymore. Let's change the conversation. He says, I'm happy to not use the term ESG. People are so invested now in hating ESG for reasons that don't really have much to do with ESG. So basically, the term is getting a bad smell. Conservatives and sensible investors are saying, wait a minute here, you're using my money to promote wokeness instead of to make me money. That is not just wrong, it's actually illegal. And so there's a lot of this. I want to talk a little bit about the opposition, folks. Here in my state of Florida, Ron DeSantis has come out and said very clearly that this needs to be stopped. Here's what he said: "The leveraging of corporate power to impose an ideological agenda on society represents an alarming trend. From Wall Street banks to massive asset managers and big tech companies, we've seen the corporate elite use their economic power to impose policies on the country they could not achieve at the ballot box. Through the actions I announced today, we are protecting Floridians from woke capital and asserting the authority of our constitutional system over ideological corporate power." Pretty interesting. Some of the people in the legislature are talking about this too. The woke elites are using ESG investing to prop up far left policies, undermine our national security, raise prices, etc. And so they say the legislature is going to do something about this. And actually, there's a lot of action coming from states right now. Just a couple of weeks ago, a coalition of 19 state attorneys general sent a letter to BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, and we'll have more to say about BlackRock CEO Larry Fink in the weeks ahead. I'm working on a big article for the New American about BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, and they're really serious. They're coming after these guys. They're suggesting that there may be illegal activity here going on. So these state attorneys general are saying that they cannot do this. Right? These companies are supposed to be operating solely in the interests of their beneficiaries, right? That's their job. They are fiduciaries for their clients, for their investors. And so to run around wasting client money, promoting climate shenanigans and political agendas and wokeness is just not going to fly. They said whether these mixed motives arise from a desire to save the world or attract from investment from European or far left pension funds is ultimately irrelevant to the legal violation. Okay, that's what these attorneys general said in the letter. It's the attorneys general of Arizona, Nebraska, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, and West Virginia. They went on to say that our states will not stand idly by for while our pensioners' retirements are sacrificed for BlackRock's climate agenda. So yeah, they're serious, folks. They are not happy with this. BlackRock obviously is a powerhouse. It's got $10 trillion under management, literally more than the economy of every country in the world except the U.S. and China. The Biden administration and BlackRock are like practically one entity. It's hard to tell where one begins and the other ends. And of course, the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, is on the board of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's on the board of the World Economic Forum, which is a strategic partner of the United Nations in imposing Agenda 2030. And I mean, the list of officials crossing over is just amazing. So Biden's head of his National Economic Council is Brian Deese. That was the global head of sustainable investing at BlackRock. So you're seeing how this works. Former BlackRock global chief investment strategist Michael Pyle, who's a former Obama official as well. Now he is the chief economic advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. You've got Deputy Treasury Secretary Adewale Adeyemo was the chief of staff to BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. Now he's the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. And folks, this stuff is really, really serious. So the ESG is kind of a hybrid of government and fascist mega corporations imposing this. And really, there's all kinds of really troubling things going on here that these attorneys general are raising concerns about. Really, we're talking about legal violations here, right? We're talking about these people are breaking the law, or at least potentially breaking the law by squandering clients' money and not earning the highest possible returns by wasting it on promoting these dangerous political agendas. And there's a whole bunch of examples they cite in the letter, right? BlackRock signed on to the Net Zero Managers Alliance, which commits the members to work for net zero emissions, right? Explain to clients why you're not making the money and instead you're worried about emissions, right? Your job description as a fiduciary for these clients is not to stop global warming or stop climate change or stop CO2 emissions. It's to make money, right? And yet this is what BlackRock is doing. It's not BlackRock alone, right? There's all kinds of companies involved in this silly alliance. They all say that they're working to impose the Paris Agreement on people, which again, right, you're supposed to be making me money, not imposing the Paris Agreement on our country, and on it goes. In the letter, they said that rather than being a spectator betting on the game, BlackRock appears to have put on a quarterback jersey and actively taken the field. Squelching political speech is the action of an activist whose mind is made up, not that of a neutral fiduciary seeking dialogue. They also talk about energy market manipulations, antitrust violations. So, folks, this is serious. And they said that they're going to keep investigating. Legislatures are going to be working on policies to rein in this madness. And also, I mentioned state Treasurer of West Virginia, Riley Moore. He actually created a blacklist of financial institutions that are on the restricted financial institution list. They're not allowed to do banking with the state of West Virginia. They're not allowed to have government contracts there because of this conflict of interest. They're waging war on energy companies, on coal producers, on energy producers, on oil companies. And the state of West Virginia is saying, look, you cannot, on the one hand, take our taxpayer money, take our retirement pension funds, and then on the other hand, invest that money in a way that is working to actively destroy our state's economy. So some of the companies on that list, you got BlackRock, you got Goldman Sachs, the great vampire squid, you've got JP Morgan Chase and Company, you've got Morgan Stanley, you've got Wells Fargo. So all the big banks, folks, all of the big banks, the big woke mega banks, of course, many of them are corporate members of the Council on Foreign Relations. In other words, they are dues-paying members of the deep state. So very, very troubling, folks. If you haven't seen those interviews that we did with Riley Moore, you should go watch them. Really, really incisive commentary, incredible work that they are doing. Folks, we can work on this as well, right? If you have any money that you are investing, there's a lot of ways, and even as a consumer, right? Stop going to woke companies as much as you can. There's a great website out there. I recommend it to everybody. It's called secondvote.com. And if you go there, you see it on the screen right now, you can find out where companies stand. They have 6 different metrics, and you can find out, is this a company that's promoting abortion and open borders and gun control, or is it a company that's neutral? Or better yet, is it a company that supports freedom? And you can make your shopping decisions accordingly, right? If you have 2 different options for an airline, find out which airline is less woke, which airline is wasting less customer money on waging war against our country, war against our religious freedoms, etc. Also, if you're an investor, there are a lot of funds that are popping up now to counter this madness from the ESG people. There are several that I'm invested in, full disclosure. There's the MAGA fund. There is the Timothy plan. They try to avoid companies that promote abortion and other things that would be abhorrent to Christians. There's the American Conservative Values ETF. That's ACVF if you want to know the ticker. And so, folks, you can invest your money in funds that are not going to be weaponizing your money against you and against your freedom. And folks, we all need to be involved in pushing back on this, right? The deep state knows that they couldn't get this garbage passed in the legislature, so they're going through the SEC and they're going through the woke mega banks to impose all of this on Americans. And we can fight back, right? Pull your money from the woke ESG funds, your pensions, your 401k, whatever it is. Stop shopping with these companies. Stop trusting them with your money. Shut down your bank accounts at these woke banks and go open one up at your local credit union or whatever it is, right? We have got to starve this beast of its money. And also call up your state legislator, call up your state treasurer. If your state has a treasurer, call up your state attorney general and say, look, we do not want our money invested in a company that's waging war on the family, that's waging war on our economy, that's waging war on energy, because their goal, folks, ultimately is to turn the entire global economy into a fascist, technocratic, big corporation, big government marriage, technocracy. And if we don't start resisting, it's going to get further and further and further. So I just want to share that about ESG. We've got to resist this, folks. It's their way of imposing wokeness on us by the back door, but we can resist. The resistance is building. It must continue. I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State. Go to thenewamerican.com. Obviously, subscribe. Share this out, folks. Help us get this information out there. All the big tech companies are so woke. They're trying to prove how great they are on ESG. So they are deleting us. They're hiding us. They're using shadow bans against us. If you don't help us get this information out, if you don't email it to your friends and post it everywhere, the woke mega corporations and their propaganda machine are going to keep on driving the public narrative. So help us get the word out. Stay tuned. Subscribe. Go to thenewamerican.com. and recommend us to others. Again, I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, God bless you all. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, hit like, hit that little bell so that you'll be notified whenever we post new videos. And also, please make sure to share this video with your friends. Email's a great way to do it. Remember, there are powerful forces working to steal our freedom and destroy our country. We need to work together, expose those behind the deep state. Otherwise, you can kiss your liberties goodbye.